Alright guys, today we're going to show you the difference between the two clutch compression tools that we have. The old style, which is the part number CCT520. This is our old shop one. It's been used thousands of times in here. This is the one that works on a lot of different machines. Polaris changed their clutch setup on the 2017s to use where you need a little bit different setup. And the main problem is this part here. Our tool won't fit through here from either direction, so we needed to make something different. We spent a lot of time on it. We did a lot of different things, and this is the best setup we found so far to work. And this is the CCT520. It'll work on all the 17 clutches with the square rollers on them, and it works on some other models too, but it was designed for this. So this is just a metal plug in that bearing. Some people like to pound it out or beat it out of there. Then you can use the old compression tool. The problem we found with that is if that's rusted in that bearing, this orange piece here is the seal on the bearing. You can either damage that bearing by pounding it out, or the whole bearing itself will come out, and then if you do that too many times, that bearing won't stay in there. It'll just wear out that spot where it's fitted in there. So the best way to do it is get a tool to do it right. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is grab the tool, take the small diameter end of the shorter threaded end and stick it through the helix bushing, and just stick it in there and put it through the hole. So this is what it's going to look like on the other side. It'll kind of go through there like that. And then what you want to do is put the bracket on and put a washer and a nut, and you just want to kind of hand tighten this, and then just give it one little snug thing. You don't have to go crazy with it. Just kind of hold the threaded rod with the other hand and go like that. And usually that's good enough to hold everything in place for that end. Then you'll put this part in the vise. Just tighten this up in the vise. Make sure it's good and tight. Now your clutch is kind of locked on there. It'll spin around and stuff like that. That's normal. That's good. And then slide on these and the nut in the washer. Thread this down. It is nice to have a little bit of lube or grease or something on there. The big part is if you get too much on there, you'll get it all over your hands and on the clutches when you're working on stuff like that. So if you do put some on there, which is a good idea, just keep a light amount on there and just make sure when you're done with everything, you clean everything up real good. But then once you get to this point, it's pretty much like using our old tool. Just tighten this up a little bit, and you're just putting a little bit of tension on there to take the tension off these bolts. And then I think I've cracked all these loose already, just to speed up for the video. Sometimes now, if this has been apart before, there's blue Loctite on them. So if you're having a hard time, you might want to heat them up a little bit, and that'll help you get them out easier. We've been testing with this one, so it's been in out quite a few times. But then it's just a matter of spinning these out. These are, on this particular model, use a T25, which is what Polaris uses on most of them. If you're using the stock helix, or if you're using the same helix going back and forth, it's a good idea to take a marker and mark where your alignment so you get them back together the right direction. The nice thing is this tool is used to change the spring and the helix out of there. But anytime you do maintenance, you want to change your rollers or your internal rollers, your square sliders on the outside, you have to take the spring and helix out of there. So you'll need a tool like this for your normal maintenance also. But once you get the 4 bolts out, just back this off. Now if you didn't tighten the little nut on the bottom, which is it takes a 9/16 wrench, sometimes this will start spinning on you. So that's the one thing you got to be careful of. You don't want it to come loose and spin off. But usually, as long as you give it that little bit of snugness, it stays on there. You still back this off, and as you do that, the spring and the helix will come up and out of the clutch. One thing, you don't want to use an impact wrench on this. This is not designed for that. Once you get that far, take the nut off, and you'll be able to use or remove your helix. your rollers, inspect them, make sure they're good. You got your spring. And then your clutch is still stuck down there, so what you have to do to get that off is you just take it back out of the vise. Grab your wrench. Just unthread that. And your clutch is free and good to go, and then you can work it, clean on it, do whatever you need to. You got your clutch, you want to put it all back together. Again, you just stick the small end through. So it goes through the hole here. Oops. Like that. Angle bracket on. Washer and the nut. And again, you're just going to want to just give it one little snug thing. You don't want to crank it super tight or nothing like that. But I'm just holding the threads on the other side. Like that. Put it in the vise. Or if you don't have the vise, you can put it on the edge of the table and kind of hold it and stuff too. And then to compress the springs and stuff down in there, you just put your spring in. Put the spring in. Get your rollers down in place, make sure it seats on the spring. Helix in there. And then you just put the nut and washer on and compress it down. Again, you don't want to use an impact. And just slowly compress it down. And obviously you can see it's pretty easy with one hand, just compressing that spring nice and easy and safe. Don't have to worry about come shooting out of there. You don't have to worry about wrecking the bushing or anything like that. Now, for some reason, some of these fit nice and tight, some are a little bit looser, but you got to square up the helix a little bit to go down in that hole, and you'll see it sits pretty flat. You don't have to crank on it super tight. You want it just a little bit loose, so you move around to line up your bolt holes. Then what you want to do is put a little Loctite on them. You want to use a blue Loctite. Alright, so once you get all 4 bolts in, just want to make sure you got them torqued to where you need them. Make sure they're all tight. They are. So then you just back off this nut, unthread it. Once that's off, then it's just a matter of taking this out of the vise. Again, just hang on to it so it doesn't fall on the floor and wreck the clutch or nothing, but it's just a matter of hanging on to it, breaking this nut loose. Like that. Take that off and pull it, and you're good to go. That's how you use it. Again, that's what this is designed for, is the newer clutches with this in there. It does work on a lot of the older ones that doesn't have this plug. It's kind of the same way. So you know, if you do buy it, it can be on multiple uses on other things too. One other thing, we don't really list it as for a primary clutch. This is off a 17 General right here, but it can be used on that also. Same type of process. What you need to do is turn the clutch up on its side and just carefully stick this in there. The one thing you don't want, the very first part of this is the taper that it gets pressed on the crankshaft, so you don't want to booger that up at all. This one normally shouldn't. You slide it through there. It should go through. Slide the bracket on, the nut in the washer. Again, you can just give it a little snug if you want. Like that. Stick it in the vise. And now You can use this to safely compress your spring or change your weights and stuff like that. Unlike the secondary, it's going to depend on the model. It might wobble around a little bit just because it doesn't always sit 100% flat on here. Some models will, some won't. This particular one it doesn't. But what you want to do is mark your clutch before you take it apart. We did that with some X's there. Slide the collar on with the nut and the washer. And what this does is it allows you to compress this cover evenly and square so it doesn't damage the bushing in your cover. And plus, that way on these newer machines with the stiffer springs and stuff in there, you can compress it nice and easy. So right now I'm compressing that down. You can actually use this if you just want to see if the clutch is able to move all the way. If you want to just change the weights, you can take those in and out now, they're free. If you want to change the spring, take these out. Once you take all these bolts out, you can back this off again. Again, just kind of watch this. If this starts turning, then you got to tighten up that bottom nut a little bit more. But as I'm backing this off, you'll see that these two are separating, the spring's coming up and out of there. Once it comes out, once you get high enough, all the tension's off it. And you're good to go. And then take this off. You want to change springs, blow it out, clean it out, whatever. You just pull it up, clutch right off, right off there. And you're good to go. Again, just make sure this is tight. Sometimes on the primary it'll loosen itself up a little bit. But do whatever service work you need to do. Stick your spring in there. Stick your cover plate on. Make sure your alignments are done, or you line up your alignment marks, and compress this down. The one thing you want to watch is when you compress this down, it should go nice and level and square and everything, but you do still need to line up the center pole or the center rod going through the clutch with the bushing. So you can kind of watch down in there and see when it goes. Once it gets close, you just got to kind of eyeball it and line it up. And it should go nice and easy. I'm doing it with 2 fingers, compressing a really stiff spring. If it's binding up or all of a sudden doesn't want to go, that means you're not lined up here. Back off and try to reline it up again. But then you just crank it down to a certain point. You don't have to go all the way down. You can actually pull up on that to fill in this gap here. And it's just a matter of tightening these, or putting these back in, tighten them up. Let's do it real quick here for the video. If you're using an air impact or electric impact like this, you don't want to super crank on these because they are just going into aluminum. So I'm just kind of going light at it first. That's enough to hold it in place. Then you back this off. And then you want to torque these to whatever the factory specs is on your machine, and you're good to go. Again, this is the CCT520. A lot like our old Polar, just works a little bit different for the new style clutches.